Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Okay. Can everybody please mute? Okay. Okay. All right. Welcome back. Let me share my screen. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Let me turn on the chat here. Okay. All right. Welcome back. Let's see. Right. So we are on the other half of the semester where and so let's see what we've got still to go. Right. So last week we introduced Redux as a mechanism to be able to maintain state on the client side, so that you could declare a centralized place where we can maintain the state of the whole application, and then have that trickle down throughout the application, and components can choose what they need from the state to be able to render their local state. Right. We also talked about how to synchronize a local state, perhaps with a form, a component that maintains local state for rendering a form, input fields, dropdowns, and whatnot, and synchronize that with an application level state. right? But nevertheless, that state is still very transient, right? Any changes that you might do at the local state and at the application state on the client on the browser, if you refresh the screen, right, all that is gone, right? All that state is gone. So we don't have a way yet to make that state persistent, right? That if we leave the application today and come back tomorrow, we would love that state to still be there, right? So we need a mechanism to make that persistent, right? And so to do that, we need to introduce additional technologies such as server side and middle tier and databases. So we're going to be focusing the next couple of weeks on doing just that. How to use Node.js or some middle tier. In particular, we're going to be looking at Node.js. We're going to see how to use that to use a server side application, right, that can maintain state over multiple requests. Even if you refresh the screen, even if you log out and come back tomorrow, right, you like to be able to see that information, right? So we're going to focus this week and a little bit of next week on creating a middle tier server, right, to maintain that state. Okay, and then the week after that, we'll introduce MongoDB as the data layer that is going to allow us to maintain that state permanently, right? Be able to store it in a file system so that even if the server crashes, even if our application crashes, we can always look at the persistent state, recreate that state from disk, right, from a database, right, and reload that, and then reinstantiate the application at whatever state we left it. And then we have for after that we will be focusing more on the project, and there'll be a presentation. We have a guest speaker is going to be talking to us about the ethics with that relates to web development, and so we'll do that right before Thanksgiving. Let's see. There's a question on the chat. It says, Professor, could you please give demonstrations on how to refactor the links of previous assignments attaching Piazza post screen? Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. Sure. We can chat about that. Sure. Let's see. Okay. Any other questions? Anything else? Any other questions that I might have? We will have another quiz later this week on Thursday, right? That we'll deal, I believe, with React or Redux. Can you open the previous quiz answers? Yes, certainly. 5610. Let me see. React. Was it React? Just look at real quick. Okay, quiz 4. So quiz 4, edit, and quiz 4. Let me open that for everybody. And I'll make it available for everybody. Okay. And same thing for here. All right, so everybody can see now the answers. If you have any questions, we can start a thread on Piazza so everybody can review, or if you've done any mistake or anything, you can let us know, and then we can regrade everyone and give everybody their points back if need be. All right, so that's the plan for the next couple of weeks. Let's focus on the material for today. We'll talk about the Node.js as to be able to create a server and be able to maintain state across requests, right? Even if you have if you refresh the React.js application. Okay. All right. Let's talk about that. The material can be found here in Node Express. And I think it's available for everybody. All right, so let's just talk about this in general, what we're trying to do. All right, so most of the semester we've spent it over here on this left-hand side of this diagram, right? But our application actually spans multiple tiers, right? A client-server application typically has at least three layers, or we call them three tiers, right? First, there's a client application, which we've spent, almost half of the semester we've spent over here on the client. All right, and that entails everything that has to do with interacting with the user, right? In our case has been a React.js application, which contains JavaScript, HTML, CSS, maintaining state with Redux and whatnot, right? And it's fully running on a browser, right? And we refer to that as the
I can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear?
I could hear you.
Yeah, I think you're back. Maybe not. Jose, I think we caught the tail end of that sentence.
Zoom recording. Now screen. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. So we've focused most of our time here on the client, and so but there's many more layers that we need to discuss, right? So we're going to be focusing the next couple weeks on this other 2/3 of the application, right? We're going to have here the server, which we're going to be talking about today, and which oftentimes we refer to as the middle tier, and it's responsible for receiving events or messages from the client, right? And to interpret those events, to modify some permanent representation of the state of the application, right? So the client is responsible for interacting with the user, right, and parsing hand gestures, right, and voice and whatnot, everything that has to do with humans, as they type at the keyboard or they move a mouse, right, or they tap the screen or they speak, right? They generate a whole bunch of events, right, that the client application is responsible for managing and parsing out and making sense out of it. Now, these need to be packaged into messages that are sent over to the server, right? And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. How is it that this communication happens, right, between the client and the server, right? And what it's called a client-server architecture, right? We've only been focusing on half of the coin. We have to look at the other half of the coin, right? So the server is responsible for receiving HTTP requests, which we're going to generate today, and that request usually entails, a header, a body that contains payload information that we're going to be sending across the wire. Right? It needs to be formatted, it needs to be stringified, it needs to be converted into bits and bytes that are sent over to the server. The server, right? And there's many types of servers. There's Java servers, there's Tomcat, mail servers, there's tons of servers. We're going to be focusing on Node.js server technology, right? And so the server is going to receive this HTTP request that's coming from the wire, is going to parse that request, right? It's going to extract the information either from the URL, it's going to also data that is going to be embedded inside of the message inside the body of the message,
Right? It's going to extract that. It's going to parse it into a JSON object, right? And then it needs to make sense out of it. Right? Some of the information that we're sending is for creating new data. Some messages are for removing data. Others updating data, right? Or requesting data, right? So those are the more typical types of operations that we're doing, right? There's 4 or 5 basic operations. We are either creating new data, reading data that already exists, right? We are updating data that already exists, or we're deleting data that already exists, right? And so that spells out CRUD, right? CRUD, CRUD. And so we'll see, we'll learn today on what are the standards or best practices, right, of communicating between the client and the server. So that's going to be the focus of today and later on this week, right? This whole week, and the assignment that's coming up. And then the next part of this, which we'll be focusing a little later, is that information needs to, whatever data is coming through, and we run the algorithms here on the server, and whatever the results, right, are going to be manipulating some data model, right, that we need to persist permanently in some kind of database or file system or XML or JSON or whatever, right? We need to make it permanent so that if we come back tomorrow and we log in, later next week, that data is still there, right? Even if the server crashes or the front end crashes, the data is permanently stored there. And that's going to be the focus of next week and the remainder of the course, right? How to use MongoDB for permanent storage. Right? So let's focus on the server side for now. So we're going to be using Node.js. I mean, we've been already using Node.js all along, right? So all the commands that we've been using so far, using npm start, right, and or npm create React app and whatnot, or npm install. All those are actually commands that are being interpreted by a Node. Okay, and when we start the React.js application, that's actually a Node.js application, server application, right? It compiles the JSX and the React.js into plain old JavaScript, right? And it starts up a server that hosts our application, right, at localhost 3000, right? And then we can interact and render it and whatnot. So we're already been using Node.js, but now we want to be using Node.js not to host the front end, which we'll still do that, right? So we're still going to have the Node.js hosting a React.js application, but now we're going to be using Node.js also to be able to host a server application, a pure server application, right? It's not going to have any front end. It's only going to be responsible for hosting data, right, that the front end is going to need, right? So basically, we're going to have the front end, which is going to render this for the human user, but this front end is going to go fetch data from the server. It says, hey, server, do you have this data? Instead of us maintaining data only on the client side, that we see that it's ephemeral, right? If you refresh, we lose any changes. Instead, we're going to make sure that it's persisted also on the server side. Okay, we'll need to create a brand new project, right, for the upcoming assignment and for a brand new application. And the way we do it is using the same npm commands that we've been using, right? So the way to create a server-side application using Node is very, very simple. You first create a directory for it. You go into that directory and you say npm init, right? And boom, you have a project, or well, the beginnings of a project. Right? So let's demonstrate that. Okay, so over here, we're going to go into users, Januzi, new, 21, all, and we can go to webdev. And so in here, we have webdev. These are some of the applications, the React.js application that we've been working on. And now we need the server side. We're going to have a server, And to do that, we just create the directory. Something like webdev. Okay, this is we'll say fa21 node server. Okay, and we can go in there, go into this directory, webdev fa21. There's nothing here, right? There's no content in here. And the way we create a Node.js application, right, is that we just do npm init. So this is going to start up a questionnaire. It's going to ask me about this new Node.js project. It says, you know, it'll take the default name of the project will be the name of the directory, right? So we can go yes, we'll go with that. It's asking you, is this the version? I'm just going to take the default options that it offers me. Say that this is a server for web dev groups. The entry point will be index.js, test command, git repository. Eventually, we will be associating this with a git repository, so that we can then deploy it, right? And keywords, you know, web dev. And author, I'll say yourself. License. I'll say then it captures all this information into a JSON object. I say yes, it's good. And what it does is that it creates this package JSON file. See that? So this package JSON basically describes your project plus any dependencies that your project might have with other libraries that it might need. Okay? If you notice, right, all the projects that we've been using so far, all our React application, you'll notice that there will be a package JSON in there. Right? All the React applications that we've been playing around with all this semester, there is a package JSON. Right? It is a React.js application is a Node.js application. Right? It's a type of Node.js application. Okay. So this is going to be another Node.js application, but it's not going to be React at all because it's not going to have any front end. Right? It's going to be exclusively for data. Right? And the reason is that the React.js application, right, it's running on a browser all by itself. Right? It's living here, right, running on somebody's browser, and because it's running in a browser, it has a lot of limitations. Right? For instance, it can't access a file system because it's my file system. Right? You know, my application is being downloaded and it's running on my browser. I don't want that application that somebody else wrote, right, that I'm downloading and it's running on my browser. I don't want it to have access to my file system. Right? So, right, they're not allowed to look at my file system. And so it's kind of limited of what it can do. It can't save anything, right? It's fully dependent for data. It's fully dependent on the outside world. Okay, so it can perhaps go back to where it came from, right? The domain that it was downloaded from, and maybe there's a server there that it can get data from it and store data and whatnot. That's okay, right? The client can talk to where it was downloaded or other servers, right? It can go to weather.com and download information from there, or it could go to Netflix or go to IMDb or whatever, right, to fetch information and then display it for us, right? So that it can do. So we have the server. All right, so let's play around with this application we just created. Right? I'm gonna open it up with my favorite IDE. Say open, and let's see. NU, fall, web dev, and this is the one we just created. Let's open it up. And there's nothing in it, right? The only thing we have in there is this package JSON. That's all there is, right? And we can create a brand new file here. It could be a JavaScript file that just says hello. There it is. And in here you could type in all the JavaScript commands that we already know, right? For instance, you could say console log hello world, right? And this is just JavaScript, just plain old JavaScript, with the difference, right? If I go back here, say there's my hello.js, see that? I can run it. I can run it using Node. I can say Node, and I can pass it to hello.js, and there it is. It runs. Okay. Now, obviously, this is a command line JavaScript file that I can run from the command line, right? And so it's it's limited in the sense that it has no UI, right? So here it's JavaScript, but there's no DOM, there's no HTML, right? There's no browser, there's no buttons, there's no rendering anything, right? It's plain old JavaScript, right? But it has no user interface, no browser. It's not running inside of a browser, right? It's running on my desktop, right? And so it kind of complements the JavaScript that is running on the browser. On the browser, you have a full-blown user interface, right? You can render things and interact with the user. Whereas over here, but it's running on the browser, but it doesn't have access to data, right? It can't have access to a file system, right? It doesn't have a database. Whereas over here, this Node.js application is running on my desktop and it has full access to my file system, right? I'm running it, right? And it has access to a database that might be running on my same server. And so it's a full-blown application, desktop application. And so they could complement each other, right? And the way they're going to complement is through HTTP requests, right? The browser, which is missing a database, missing a file system, is going to send messages to my server here, right? Through HTTP, which does have access to a file system, has access to the database. It also has unfettered access to the network. It can connect to anybody, anywhere, right? As opposed to a browser, an application running on the browser is limited on what network connections it can make, right? So we're going to be using these to complement each other, right? So what kinds of applications are we going to run? Well, we're going to be creating network applications, middle tier applications, this over here, right? This types of applications, server applications. Node.js is not synonymous to server. Node.js is only just an interpreter. It's a JavaScript interpreter. It only understands JavaScript, and you execute it just saying node, and then you give the JavaScript, and it does whatever the JavaScript file says, right? It's not synonymous to a server. It is very common, right? And it's a very popular solution to implement servers, right? Just with 2-3 lines of code, boom, you have a server up and running. Okay, just like any other language, JavaScript is not not any more powerful than any other language, right? The importance about a language is the community and all the libraries and culture and whatnot that has evolved around a particular language, right? So any language you choose is only as interesting as the community and the support and the open source community and all the libraries that are associated that allow you to do build interesting things. So Node.js, same. JavaScript, the same thing, right? It's interesting only because it can run on the browser and it can access and dynamically render user interfaces. On the desktop, it's interesting because there are really cool libraries that we can use to create these kinds of servers. Right. So let me show you how to create a server. Right? So to create a server, we're going to be using a library called Express. Okay. And so we can install it, by just saying npm install Express. Now there is a URL, there's a website that you should familiarize yourself. It's npmjs.com. We're using always this command npm, right? npm means Node Package Manager. It allows you to install libraries or install packages that can execute here and install commands so that you can run locally, right? One of those libraries that we're going to be using is the Express library, and that library is hosted here in npm. npm js.com is it's a repository of libraries that the community, the Node.js community is sharing with the rest of us, right? Many of them, most of them are open source libraries. They're free to use, right? Some of them are for pay. But if you want to find libraries that you can use, you can search them here in npm. So for instance, we can look up Express, right? And Express is one of the more famous and most used and popular libraries that allows us to create servers, right? So let's use it. Let's create it. So to download it, let's see. We have the package.json file. We're going to do npm install Express. Okay, so that's going to download the Express library, and notice that it's going to create here a node underscore module. See that? So that node underscore module is a directory, right? It's a standard directory of where typically Node maintains or keeps a copy of all the libraries that are needed. And so node underscore modules is where it goes, right? And we've seen that directory before, right? If we look at other React.js applications that we've been writing, notice that there's a node underscore module. See that? These are all the libraries that we've been using for building our React applications, right? And so when you download or install a React Router DOM, or when you install Bootstrap or whatever, you've been using npm install yada yada yada, right? And that's where it goes in the node underscore modules. Okay, so we just install our first library, the Express library, and it puts it under node underscore modules. So if you look in there, it's going to have tons of libraries, right? That we didn't install all these libraries. Well, these are libraries that the Express library depends on, right? So npm is smart enough that it will not only install the specific library that you tell it, but it'll also install any other dependency libraries that it needs, right? So all these were downloaded and copied into node underscore modules, right? Now these libraries, we have to remember that these are libraries that should never be included in your Git repository, right? These libraries should only live under node underscore modules, right? And only when you need to have copies, you can just do npm install, right? And these are recreated and re-downloaded and recreated into this directory. So there's no need to put any of this in the Git repository. You will also notice that it made an entry. If you remember our package JSON file, it had all my name and whatnot, the name here, the description. But notice that it added a new entry here in the dependency. See this? Right. This is because we just installed Express, right? And so it makes some note to know that this particular application is dependent on Express, right? Because I just installed it. So it makes a note, making sure, hey, make a note of all the things that I need to be able to execute, right? So it remembers that I installed that, right? Which is good. Anyway, so inside of hello, let's create a couple of things in here. Right. One of the things that we might do here is show you how to very, very easily create a server, a really, really simple server. Right. Let me show you. So first of all, we start off with loading the Express library. So we can say Express it's require. Require is the equivalent of import. Okay. Require was the idea of requiring a library was earlier than the language going into modules and doing import and whatnot, but it's the equivalent of import, right? So we'll say require Express. There it is. So that's going to load the library that we just installed, and then we can create an instance of the library and store it in a local constant. Say Express. So here Express is a function that is behaving like a constructor, right? We call the Express function, right? It instantiates, right? We create an instance of it, which is this app. Now, this app, there should be only one instance of this app at all times, right? And what this app is going to allow us to do is create this middle tier, right? With that app, right, we are going to implement, right, this middle tier, this server over here, right? So let's see how we do that. All right, so for instance, one of the things that we can do is say that if it sees a request, right? If it sees a request, we want to be able to do this, right? Be able to receive a request, do something, execute something on the server, and then send back a response, right? We call that the request response cycle, right? All communications between the client and the server has this loop, right? The client sends an HTTP request. The server processes that request, and then it generates a response back to the client. Now, this client, most of the clients that we've been the only clients we've been considering in this course has been browsers, right? Browsers are generating these HTTP requests, right? and we haven't looked at any responses or anything like that, right? But today we're going to introduce the whole cycle. Okay. So now these requests, there are many types of requests. There are and they are categorized depending on their intent, their intended purpose, right? For instance, sometimes the client is requesting data from the server. Other times the client is meaning to send data to the server, right? So sometimes the client gets data and it says, hey, it's asking for data, requesting data, and we call those types of HTTP methods, we call it a get method, right? An HTTP get method. Or oftentimes, other times we'll be sending data or posting data to the server. Okay. Other times we'll be deleting data from the server. Right. Other times it will be modifying or updating or putting data on the server. Right. So here we can use app to listen for an incoming get request. Right. It says listen. Start listening for a get request. And I can say, well, and these HTTP requests typically are associated to a URL, right? A universal resource locator that has a path, right? And that path, we can listen in for incoming requests that were posted to a particular URL, and then do something about it, right? So, for instance, we can say, if it says hello, if the request, if the HTTP URL comes in, has this pattern. This text pattern, right? We can handle in a callback. We can handle it here in a callback function. Right? We say if you see this coming as an HTTP request, then run this function, right? So we could do maybe something as simple as say, console.log. We could say hello world, and so it'll be printed into the console. Right, if it sees this hello, this request, right? And finally, we need to actually have the server start listening at a particular port, right? And so we can say app listen, right? And then we say let's listen at 4,000, say 4,000. I'm not going to use 3,000, which is a very common port, because I know React.js, that application is running on port 3,000 already. And we don't want to clash and having two applications listening at the same port. Actually, you can't, right? It would collide, and the server would say, "Oh, sorry, that port is already taken." I'm going to go with 4,000. It's also very common. All right, so if I go back to my console and I start the server, let's see, we have the hello class. There's hello.js. Let's run it. You can say node now. Say node hello. Okay, notice that before it had printed something immediately, hello world and whatnot. But notice that now it's stuck. It's kind of like not continuing, right? I could stop it by just saying Control-C, right? Or if I run it, notice that it's stuck. So it's forever now listening at port 4,000. It's listening for incoming requests at HTTP : localhost 4,000, presumably to hello. So let's not have it wait any longer, right? So let's start off let's start here and hit that server at localhost 4,000. So we can say localhost 4,000. If I do that, right, it says, hey, I couldn't notice that the server responded saying, hey, there's nothing mapped to / okay. Basically what it's saying is that it's assuming that this is a / like at the root, right? At the root of the server context, right? It's saying, there's nothing mapped to that URL pattern, right? There's nothing there. But if I say hello, actually there's something mapped to the hello, right? We have this mapped to the hello. We have that mapped to the hello. So let's see what we get. Okay, notice here, let's say hello. Okay, notice that nothing happened here. Nothing happened here, but notice that indeed something happened in the server. The server did get something, it received the message, right, from the client, and it spit out hello world, just like we told it to do. That's what we did, right? But notice that the browser is kind of stuck there saying, I don't know what's happening, right? I sent this hello, but I never got a response back, right? The browser sent the request over to the server. The server received it, but the server never responded back anything. So the browser is actually stuck waiting for the browser to respond something, right? But the server never responded. So let's not keep the browser waiting. I'm going to stop the server, stop it, and let's try that again, right? So what the server receives here, right? When it sees this hello, the request, you know, if you see here, let me show you. I started again. Let me do that and show you the inspect. Let's inspect here. I'll put it on the bottom. And let's look at the network. So if I do the hello again, notice that there's a request. See that? There's the request went out. Request went out. Notice it says the status is pending, meaning it hasn't received the response. So it doesn't know what happened to it yet. Right? It's pending, waiting for the server to respond. Right? And we can take a look at it. It says this is what was sent to the server, right? Including, you know, all this headers, right? So it sent a whole header using all you know, the language, the timestamp, any cookies, right? It sent all this information, but it never received any response back to the server. So it's just stuck, right? The response never came back. Right? So right now it's just eventually will time out, and the browser says, okay, well, I waited, but the server never got back to me, right? So let me stop that. So let's not have the browser waiting all the time. So all this information that the browser is sending over, right? Or you know, all this header information, all that is accessible to the server. The server receives this, right? App here receives this request, right? And it parses all the headers, it parses all that, right? And it passes it to us, right? In the callback function, it passes it to us in an object, right? Which I'm going to call request. Okay. It also passes me an object that I'm going to call response. Okay. There it is. It passes me those two objects. Okay. This request represents everything that is coming from the client. In this case, the browser, right? The timestamp, you know, any cookies, the header, the body, any JSON object that I might have sent, any files that I might be trying to upload, any images, PDF documents that I'm uploading, anything that I'm sending to the server, it's accessible through the request, right? So we're going to be using the request quite a bit. But it also passes me a reference to the response that is going to allow me to send back a response back to the client, right? Together with these two objects, the request and the response, this function can participate, right? It can participate in this cycle, right? In this request response cycle. It can parse data outside from the request, right? And then generate a response back to the client. I'm not particularly sending anything of interest to the server in the request, so I'm going to ignore it from now. But I am going to generate a response back to the server because I feel bad for the client is kind of sitting there waiting for a response. Let's do that. So I'm going to use the response here. I'm going to say response dot send. Now there's quite a few things that I can send. I can send just plain text. I can send JSON back. I can send a file, right? I can send an HTML document. I can send anything I want. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to send some text. I'm just going to say hello world from node server. Okay, there we have it. Right, so we're sending something back. Let me restart the server. Let me restart the server. Okay, and I'm going to try and hit that hello again. Let me clear this and refresh. Okay, notice that now, notice that it immediately came back. Notice that the server did print out that it got a request, hello world, and immediately responded with that text. There it is. See that? So notice that now the hello request like went out. Right, here's the request, and the response did come back as just plain text. Or just plain text. See that? I could have responded with HTML. I could have responded with a file, if I'm downloading a file, right? Or JSON. I can send anything. I can instead send, maybe instead of sending this, I can send JSON. I can send JSON, And so this would be a JSON object, say maybe message is that. It's not a JSON object. But if I restart the server, if I refresh, you notice that now I'm getting back a JSON object instead of just plain text. See that? Which with an attribute and a value, and it's properly formatted as JSON. You can see the raw data is just a string that's coming back, and it's parsed by the browser as JSON. Okay, so there you have it, right? So this is going to allow us to create a server middle tier, right? That allows us to respond, participate in the client server cycle. Okay, make sense? Everybody still with me? Okay, yeah. So let's do something a little bit more interesting, right? So this was a really simple hello world example of creating a server, and I mean, notice how simple it's to create a server, an HTTP server. Just a couple lines here. You listen, and then you can define handlers of incoming requests and send responses, right? So let's build something, right, that we can use and build an application around, right? So for instance, we had built earlier, right, for our lecture last time, right, we had built a to-do reducer, right? And some Redux examples. We have the to-do component, right? And let me just play around with it. This app here is running the to-dos. Right? So if I run that, it's going to start Node.js, right? And it's going to be hosting a click zip. Right? We have the create to-do, we have delete. So let's try and map this so that it uses a server to keep track of the state of the application. Because notice that even if I create a couple things and delete a couple things, if I refresh, notice that everything goes away. Right? I haven't maintained any state. I mean, I'm maintaining state here on the browser, but once I refresh, poof, it's gone. Right? None of that is going to persist. So we want to make sure that we can persist beyond a refresh, right? And so the only way to do that is to write it on a file system at some point, right? Through a middle tier. Okay. So let's do that. Let's see how we can manage that. So first of all, here's my to-do JSON object. Here's my to-do JSON object. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy this, or the file. I'm going to copy the file, and I'm going to bring it over to my other JSON Node.js application. Okay, and let's see. Let's create an application that allows us to work with this. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to create here a JavaScript file, right? And I'm going to call it server. This is going to be a generic server, right? That is going to host everything that has to do with the server, right? So it's going to be hosted here in server.js, and it's going to be a server like what we saw earlier, right? We're going to do the same thing, right? We're going to do const express. Right, before we were working with a throwaway example, hello.js, but this is going to be the server, right? And we're going to set it up very similar to what we had earlier. So we're going to have express. We're going to require express. We're going to create app from express, and we're going to have app.listen at 4,000. Okay. And we're going to abandon our hello.js, right? So we're going to just keep this hello server.js. Okay. All right. So let's see if we can use that to-do file. Right. So let's copy it here. Let's see if I can paste it. To-do.json. There it is. There's to-do.json. And what we'll do is that on the server.js, we can load that JSON file. We can say const to-dos. We can say we can require the to-dos JSON. So we're loading that file into memory, and we have the to-dos right here. And then we can say, well, if you if you ask for the to-dos, I'm going to respond. Right, here's my request response, my request and my response. I'm going to respond and send you back a JSON object that contains that array. That, right? So let's try it. Let's I'm going to start my server. Instead of running it here from the command, it's good practice to create an executable here, a runtime. So I'm going to create a Node.js executable. Node.js, there it is. I'm going to call it server, and I'm going to run the file server.js. There it is, server.js. Say okay. Now I can run it here from the run configuration. So I'm going to say run, and there it is, right? Oops, something. Oh, I already have something listing on port 4000. Let's run it again. There it is. Now it's listing up for 4,000. Very good. So if I go back here, right, and I try to retrieve that, say localhost 4000, and I say /todos, there it is, right? So I can retrieve the data from the server. Yes. Okay. Yeah, excellent. So how would I connect this to my React application? Right, my React application, instead of, right now my React application is getting its data from where? From this reducer, right? And the reducer is getting its data from where? From todos.json. So we want to stop this. Instead of doing this, right? We don't want the React.js to get the data from its local file, its local copy, right? Because right? If somebody refreshes that, whatever changes we might have made are not going to survive the refresh. Right? Instead, we want to make sure that we have a permanent place on the server. Which we have access to the file system. We have access to the, to a database and whatnot. We want to be able to make it permanent over there instead of using this to-dos over here. Right? So how do we do that? Okay. So what we're going to do is that in the to-dos here, right, when we load, this is the component, right? This is the component that renders the to-dos. Okay? What we're going to do is that we're going to have the to-do when it loads, right? When it's first instantiated, we want it to do something, right? Right away when it loads. And the way we do that is by doing the following. Well, let me put this back, otherwise it's gonna crash. Let me put this back. Let me put that back. So the way we can now we can't use a constructor. A constructor would be perfect, right? Because a constructor says, okay, well, I'm being instantiated. This is a good time for initializing myself, right? Let me go find my to-dos. So what we wanted to do is that when it first loads, right, it should go fetch. It should go fetch the data from the server and retrieve it, and then initialize the reducer, right? Instead of loading it from here. So let's see how we do that. Right. To be able to listen for an unload when this component first loads, we're going to use the following. We're going to use effect. Use effect is a hook. It's a React.js hook, right, that gets invoked when whenever the component loads, right? And you pass it a function, meaning this is how you're going to handle any refresh or any instantiation or any changes in the state, right? The use effect gets notified every time the state changes or whenever the component first loads, right? It also takes another argument of an array of dependencies, right? This allows you to identify whether any changes between changes, if it's the same thing changing over and over, or allows you to compare whether something has changed from the last time that it rendered, right? If nothing has changed, then you don't want the whole component to re-render unnecessarily, right? So this array of dependencies allows you to have some control over when you should render or not re-render. If the state changes, if it doesn't change, you can establish that. If you declare an empty array, it means that I don't want to even check this, right? I just want this to run just once when it loads, right? And I'm not looking for comparing whether things have changed over time. I just want to run the very first time and then never again. Okay. So let's see. So the use effect here, right? When the to-do runs, we can say console log, right? To-do's component loaded. Right. So if we go back here and run that, this React.js, and we inspect and put this maybe on the right hand side, we can see in the console, refresh. If I reload, there it is. It says, see that to-do's component loaded. See that? So that is a function that is notifying us that the component just loaded. And that's a really good time for us to initialize ourselves, right? For instance, go to the server, fetch some data, right? And then copy it over. Okay, so let's do that. That's exactly what we're going to do. Here in the console, what's it complaining about? Oh, it's expecting key. Yeah, I think I forgot to mention this. Whenever you're iterating over an array and generating dynamic content such as this li, right? It's a good idea, right? Actually required that each component has its own unique identifier, right? Not using ID, but instead using a keyword called key. And key is a React.js attribute, right? It allows React.js to maintain a map, right, of all the components that were dynamically generated, all the content that's dynamically generated, to make sure that if the state changes, right, make sure that the correct DOM element gets updated, right? And the way it keeps track of this is through this unique identifier. So we're going to use to-do dot, and then you need to provide here something that is unique. So I'm going to use the ID of the to-do, which I know it's unique, right? Alternatively, right, although it's considered bad practice, the map, not only does it receive, each individual element, but it also receives an index, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, which is also unique within this context, right? So you could instead use IPX, the index, but it's in general considered to be a better practice to use something that it's going to be unique and that you have control over, right? Like the ID. Right? You can use the index, you can use to do the ID. That's fine, either one. But now if I refresh, notice that it's not giving me that error anymore at the key. We do still have the to-do component, right? Okay, so what are we going to do in there? What are we doing? Okay, what we're going to do is in here, just instead of just spitting out this console, okay, what we're going to do is, what we want to do is this, right? We want to do this right here. We want to generate this request that's going out to the server and retrieving that data from the server, right? So I'm just going to copy that URL. And it turns out that JavaScript has a command to just do that, right? It's called fetch. Fetch allows you to provide a URL, okay? And what it does is that it literally goes out to that server and comes back with whatever response comes back. All right, so let's do that. If we go back here and, oops. Oh, it's, okay, yeah, actually, it meant to do that. It's complaining. It's complaining saying, you try to violate a security measure, right? You're trying to hack me, right? And notice what's happening. It says that the request was blocked because of the CORS policy, C-O-R-S, CORS policy. CORS stands for cross-origin resource sharing, right? So early on in the when web applications were first coming out, people are kind of worried that wait a minute, I'm downloading an application written in JavaScript that was written by someone else that I don't know. And what they want me to do is download it, and then it executes inside of my browser on my machine. And people freaked out and says, wait, what? I'm downloading executables from some server out there that I don't know who they are, and I'm going to give them permission to run on my machine. And so a lot of effort went into making sure that anything that was downloaded from a remote server, right, that was going to execute on your browser, that it was limited on what it could do, right? So for instance, it cannot read your file system. It has no access to the file system. And also, one of the limitations that was made was that the JavaScript that was downloaded, right, from a domain, from a server, right, it was restricted to what network connections it could do, right? It could only make network connections from where it was downloaded, right? So here we have this JavaScript here in the React.js application, which is running on port 3000, right? Ours is running on port 3000. See that? But it's trying to make a connection to localhost 4000. See that? So that falls into the course policy restrictions, right? A JavaScript that is downloaded from one domain or one port, is not allowed to make any connections to any other domain, right, or any other port outside of any other IP address. So if it's downloaded from one IP address, it cannot connect to another IP address, right? Port either, right? So that's a security issue, right? That we don't want, scripts just talking to each other if it's not from the place that I trust, presumably from a domain that I'm downloading it from, right? So anyway, so that was a very legitimate concern way back when. It still is, right? But today it's actually very, very common, right? That you can write applications that are being hosted on one domain, download from there, but then you want to be able to communicate with a whole bunch of other servers that have all this information across the network, right? So we need to be able to manage this security restrictions, right? And the way we manage it is through the course policy. We can change the course policy. We need to go to the server and say, hey, server, it's okay, right? I trust this particular React application that's running on port 3000. I trust it. Let it go through, right? And then you can say exactly what you allow. I allow get, post, put, delete, and whatnot. Okay, so let's see how we can configure that. Let's see if I have it on these slides. I forget if I have it here on these slides. I don't have it in these slides. Oh, wait, I do. Here it is. Copy. And right here, right after the creation of the app instance of the Express instance, right? I'm going to paste this right here. Okay, and let's go over this real quick. So this is saying app.use. Here we had an app.get, right? Meaning I'm listening to a get request, an HTTP request. App.use says for everything. I don't care if it's get, post, put, delete. I want you to do this for any requests that come through here, right? And I want you to execute this function. Right? It doesn't matter what it is. I always want to execute this. And I'll pass it the request and I'll pass it the response, just like over here, right? We have the so here this one doesn't take a URL because it says it's for everybody. It doesn't matter. I don't care the URL. I don't care the method, the post, get, whatever, right? So always do this for any requests that come in, and I give you the request, and I'll give you a response object as well. The response, there it is. Okay, and always do this. What are we going to do? I'm going to add. What this is doing is that it's adding to the header. My headers in client server messaging, right, contains metadata about how the request should be processed and who the author is and whatnot, right? So one of the things is that there's a whole bunch of headers, those different types of headers. One of them is access control origin, meaning there's a list of domains or IP addresses that the server trusts, It says, I will allow communication from these specific origins. If they originate from these IP addresses or domains or whatnot, right, then I'm okay, right? This one would be from some URL that's coming from Heroku, right? For now, we're going to just make it star. Star means from anybody. I don't care where it comes from. I'm going to allow it to come through, right? I can also establish what kind of content I'm going to accept, right? Whether I accept JSON, XML, PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoint slides. I can establish exactly the MIME types, right? That I'm going to allow. Over here, we're saying that I'm going to allow the client to decide what that content type is. Right? I can also establish and say, what type of HTTP methods I'm going to allow. Right? Here, I'm saying that I'm letting all the HTTP requests come in. Get, post, puts, delete, options, everything. Okay. And the other thing is that I'm also going to participate if they have cookies because they're logging in and registering as new users and whatnot. All these credentials, I'm going to allow that as well. Right? And then next means that after I've added all these headers, I'm going to allow the request to continue and go forward for additional processing. For instance, processing by this get, right? And if it was a get, then this one will get it if that's the particular URL request. Yes. All right. Let's restart the server. Let's see if this fixes it. And let's go back here. And here, I'm gonna refresh. Okay, the request seems to have gone through, right? It didn't complain, at least it didn't complain. If you go to network, you'll notice that hopefully, there it is, I think it's this one. There we go, see that? There's our URL that went through our components. When it loaded, right, it generated this URL and the server responded accordingly, right, with an array of our two JSON objects, right? But notice that we're not really doing anything with this JSON objects, right? It just happens to be exactly the same JSON object that we have on the React side, right? It just happens to be the same. But we're not really doing anything with it, right? We're only just generating the HTTP requests, right? Now the server is going to respond, comes back with a response. This is the response. There it is. We'll preview the response. This is the string, right? Which is exactly what we told it to do, right? So send the JSON to-dos. So it did. The server responded with that, but we're not doing anything with it. To be able to, so this generated the response. We need to be able to wait for the response to come back, right? And then parse this string and convert it back into a JSON object, into an array, so that it lives here on the browser. And then somehow, right, tell the reducer somehow, right, that it should use the response that comes back from the server, as opposed to this hard-coded JSON array that it has over here, right? So how do we do that? Well, to parse the response that comes back from the server, we do the following. We're going to say this fetch sends back an object that allows us to register a response, right? A callback, right? Because what happens is that this fetch sends the request, right? And then it just continues. It doesn't wait, right? Instead, it gives us a method, a function that allows us to register a callback for when the response actually comes back, right? Now usually we would implement this synchronously, right? We have a function, we wait for the function to complete, right? And then we continue. Here, it's asynchronous, right? The communication between the client and the server is asynchronous. Fetch is asynchronous by default, right? And so the way asynchronous communication happens is that typically what you do is that you send the request, you don't wait for it, but you register for a callback. That will be notified when the response comes back. When it comes back, then you will notify. It says, oh, the response guy took me 3 seconds, right? But we can't waste 3 seconds waiting for the response to come back. We have other things to do, right? So the way we do that is that fetch provides a function, right, that allows us to register a callback here, and you can say and say console log response came back, or response callback. Right. So let's do that. Let's go back to the console, and I'm going to refresh, and there it is. See that response callback? Right. So the to-do is loaded. It sent the request, and then a few milliseconds later, right, we got a response back from the server, and that response is right here. It passes us the response as part of the callback, right? And we can print out the response. We can print it out, and there's the response. Yeah, there's a response object. It has a body in there, has a whole bunch of headers. Okay. It has a status 200 is an HTTP status. Everything's okay. The server responded with an okay, right? But the array is somewhere in here. It's actually inside of the body, right? The body actually contains the array, right? That's being passed back from the server. But that array or any data that is coming back from the server usually is a streamed data. It's data that is being streamed, bit by bit. Right? Because this data could be pretty big. I mean, imagine it could be a Word document, right? It could be a PowerPoint slide, it could be a file, right? Or for in our case, it's just a simple JSON array, right? How to fix the corresponding? Yeah, we fixed that. Did you know? Yeah. What was I saying? Yeah. So we need to be able to handle that streaming that is coming back from the server. It's actually very easy, right? We can just use a function here that is called response.json. So JSON, response.json will start parsing the characters as they come in from the server, right? And it'll reconstruct the JSON object from the characters that are coming in from the server, right? And then we're going to return this. We return this, and this comes back again. It's asynchronous. That streaming mechanism of parsing that, it's also asynchronous, right? And so we can register another callback for when that parsing actually concludes, right? And then it's done, and it's going to notify us that I'm done parsing all these characters and collating it into a JSON object, right? And I'm trying to parse it as a JSON object, all these characters. And I will call you back when I'm done. And hopefully it'll be the to-dos. So you can register another callback here. Register another callback, and which will be called a later time when the streaming has happened with the content. Hopefully it's the to-dos array. And here we can do console.log to-dos. Okay. So let's try it again. Let's refresh. There it is. See that? Line 16. Line 16 here. Yeah, line 16. Right? We have the array. We have the actual array coming from the server. See that? Now the client has the data that came back from the server. Now we can notify our reducer. Hey, reducer, we have this data that I got it from the server. I don't really need to hard code it on the client anymore, right? The server has it. Use this instead, not your copy, your transient copy on the React.js, right? So somehow we need to send this to the server. And how do we notify the server? The dispatch. Yeah, the dispatch. And dispatch, if we go to the reducer, and notice that it's well, this is get to-dos, right? We can notify the server with the dispatch. We can say here, hey, dispatch, right? We can pass in an action object, and we can call it the type. We can say, set the to-dos, and I can pass the to-dos as part of the action object, right? And then on the reducer side, I can handle that case set to-dos, right? And so that will be my state. return action.todos. See that? Okay. So now I don't really need this import anymore. I don't really need that import anymore. Well, here you have the state, right? We can say that the state is maybe starts off with an empty array. Starts off with an empty array. Let's refresh. There we have it. Look at that. This is behaving exactly how we had it before. Well, not exactly. This data is coming from the server, right? And you know, we are creating all these to-dos, but if I refresh, it'll come back again from the server. Just to verify that this is indeed coming from the server, let's go back to the server and let's add another couple of to-dos, and let's see if indeed this is indeed coming from the server, right? Let's go back to the server. So this is the JSON object inside of the server. Let me copy this. A couple more here, right? And so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6. So we have buy milk, walk the dogs, and pick up kids. Okay, solve world hunger. Tell no one. Okay, let's restart the server. And so go back here. I'm going to refresh. There it is. See that? We have exactly the data that is coming from the server, right? And it's received here by the client. That makes sense? So can you explain about asynchronous behavior on Node.js again? I have also heard that it is single-threaded. Could you explain? Yeah, sure. Yeah. So one of the reasons. Yeah, let's talk about that again. So what's happening here? Let's go over this again. Right, so fetch it's using a technology called promises. Right? Promises is a mechanism in JavaScript that allows you to synchronize things that are happening simultaneously, right? And so that you can make sure that they happen in a particular order, right? So what happens is that when you have things happening simultaneously, and you sometimes you can't guarantee when one thing that's the 2 or 3 or 4 things that started at the same time, that you can't guarantee maybe, you know, in what particular sequence are they going to end and complete, right? And so that makes programming things that are happening simultaneously very hard to program, because at some point you need to establish some kind of sequence, right? So what happens here is that one of the things that happens is that like someone was suggesting, JavaScript is single-threaded, right? And what it means is that there's only one thread is assigned to the Node.js process, right? And so you know, if we make these kinds of network connections, if this were synchronous, right, like most programming that we think of, you know, from when we're when we're starting to program, we think that that programs start to execute from top to bottom, from left to right, right, and things happen in a particular order. You know, if we call a function, usually the way we think about it is that function blocks and does not continue, right? Execution does not continue until that function comes back returned, right? And then you can continue, right? And that'd be fine, right? The problem here is that because it's single-threaded and we are dependent on something that is running outside our process, right? We're dependent on some server that is running elsewhere, okay? That server might crash, it might never respond, right? And that our single thread would be busy waiting for something that will never happen, okay? And because it's a single thread, right, it's a very dangerous thing to do, right? That you have to take care of that single thread so that it never blocks, right? So that it can continue. Otherwise, you know, if the user starts interacting, typing at the keyboard or mouse, it's not responding because this thread is busy just waiting for something to happen on the remote server. So instead, what fetch does is that says, okay, well, I'm going to behave asynchronously, right? I don't have threads, right? I don't want to wait for this to happen. Instead, I'm going to delegate this to another thread, right, that is going to handle this for me. I'm just going to continue, right, handling the rest of the application because I don't want to block the keyboard, the mouse, and whatnot, right? But I just said that JavaScript doesn't have multiple threads. So what other thread are you talking about? Well, it just happens that the JavaScript doesn't have multiple threads, but the browser does, right? The browser can maintain multiple threads, and it usually when you navigate to a web page, right, the browser will start multiple threads at the same time, downloading all sorts of things simultaneously. Downloading multiple images at the same time, JavaScript files, CSS files, sound files. And to speed up the process, the browser will typically start loading all this media, all this content simultaneously, and then it will build the HTML document. Okay. So what Fetch does, right, is that it delegates this to the browser. Say, hey, browser, I want to make this HTTP request, right, but I don't want to have to wait for it. So here it is. Here's the request. I'll give it to you. The browser will start a brand new thread and go and fetch that. But then we have to synchronize. It says I need to know when you're done downloading that. I need you to notify me. And the way we do that is that fetch returns a promise. Right? It returns an object called a promise that has a function called then. So that object that comes back from fetch, right, has a function called then that allows you to register for a callback, right, so that you can be notified when the response comes back from the server. And then so here's the the Node.js thread. It makes the request, does not wait for it, passes that to a browser that is responsible for that request. The JavaScript thread can continue without waiting. Right? It registers callback though, right? It continues. Now it needs to animate cats, and needs to play a movie, it needs to whatever, right? Whatever we're doing, keep playing us, as we type our keyboard, and we don't want the UI blocked, right? At some point, the browser comes back with the response, a couple of milliseconds later, and then it notifies us. It says, hey, here's the response that you were waiting for. Well, you weren't waiting for that you told me about, right? Here is the response that came back from the server, and it notifies us, whatever function we gave it. It calls the function that we registered. It passes us the response that came back from the server, and so that's how we're synchronizing things that happen in a particular sequence. Here we parse out. The response comes back, but the data in the response is not part of it, right? In the body, we still have to stream the data that's coming back. Could be multiple, megabytes, right, or gigabytes, or it could be an entire movie, right, that we are streaming, and we need to collate all that, right? And the way you do that is through these several functions here that allow you to capture this information, and this returns another promise, which we then register for, and we are notified later on when the streaming and reconstruction of the data is done, right? Which is in this case a to-do. I know this is not easy to understand right away. You're going to have to practice this many times before it becomes secondhand, right? You'll have to do it, several times, and then it'll become more and more easier to work on. Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's do a couple other things here. We use the use effect here for fetching, right? So let's do a couple more things. How about creating brand new to-dos? So how do we do that? So we have this button, and this button is doing this dispatch. Yes, but right now this dispatch is going only where? It's only going to the reducer. We never notify the server about this. We never told the server about this. So the server doesn't know, right? Even though we create it and then we refresh, notice that the server just reloads whatever the server knows, right? So we need to be able to notify the server, hey, make this permanent, right? So that later on, if I refresh, you have the truth, the array, the real array. So let's do that. So first of all, we'll need to make this a little better. We'll put this. We'll make a function out of this. We'll create a function here. We'll say const create to do. Okay, and this, so this on click, right, is going to call this create to do, and in here we're going to do the dispatch. Right, so let's move this whole thing. Let's move this thing all the way here. Maybe here. Yeah, so I'm going to move that from here, and I'm going to put it in here, and then I'm just going to call the to do here. Create to do. All right, and let's see if I think I have one too many curly brackets here. That's the parentheses. Okay, I say this should work exactly the way we had it before, right? So let's go back here. Let's refresh, create. Okay, still works the same way. Good. But notice that this only is, if I refresh, notice that it's gone, right? So we need to notify the server. So let's do the server. So how do we do this? Well, we need to send this data. This is the object that we want to send. Let's create it. Let's put it here. So const new to do is this here, right? Is this right here, right? I think that right here, right? So I'm just going to put it here, new to do. And this is like that, new to do. Correct? There we go. So this should behave just the same way. See? Yeah, it works the same way. Okay. Yeah. So we need to send this information to the server. So how do we send it to the server? Well, we're going to use the same method here, fetch. So use the same thing, fetch. Say fetch. Right. The URL is the same URL. Same URL. So I'm just going to copy that. But this time, we need to pass an object. Before we weren't passing an object, we were reading right from the server. Now we have to send data to the server, right? So how do we do that? We have a configuration object that we can pass fetch. And we can say, for instance, in the body, I want you to include a string representation of the data, right? In the data, so we do this. We say JSON.stringify, okay, the new to do, right? And also, I'll need to let you know that this is configured in a particular format, right? And the way I do that is I can pass you a header and let you know that the content type, right, is that this string is not just any string. It's a string that is formatted as a JSON format, right? And that's the standard MIME type, right, of what that document data type. Okay, it should be interpreted as a JSON document, right? Not as a PowerPoint slide, not as a Word document, right? As it should be interpreted. It's not an image, right? It should be interpreted as JSON. Okay. Also, the proper thing to do is that I can't use get. So this is using a get, right? By default, fetch. If you don't say anything, by default, fetch sends a get request, right? Now, get, you cannot pass objects in get, right? To pass objects to a network, you have to use instead, you need to use another method. And you can establish what method you're going to use here. I'm going to say you're going to use the post method, not get. Right? You can also send data using put. Put and post allow you to include a payload data, right, as part of the body of the message. Right? It'll be formatted any which way you want, right? And then it'll be sent it over to a server. Right? Okay, excellent. What else? Now, this information here is going to be sent out to the server. Now, on the server side, we need to listen in for that incoming post request, right? Let's do that. Let's go back to the server. Let's go back to the server. Here's our server. And our server is right here. And we had the get. We're listening for the get. Now we have to listen for the post. listening for a post. It's the same URL. To-dos, right? So notice you would say, well, if you have the same URL, then how does it know which one to run? How does it distinguish? Well, it does because it knows the type. Right? The method is either post or get. Right? So if you say a get to a /post to-dos, it'll go this way. Right? If you do a /to-dos to a post, right, then it'll be this one. So here you have the same callback, right? Same request response, right? And here is what do we do with this, right? How do we get the actual data that's coming? As mentioned earlier, right? The data is going to be embedded in the body, right? So we can retrieve it on Node.js. We can retrieve it from the body. We can say the new to-do, I can retrieve it from the request's body. See that? And what would I do with the to-do? Well, I would what I would do is that this to-dos, instead of a constant, I would put a let, so just an array. The new to-dos would be what? Would be the old to-dos appended, and we append the new to-do at the end. See that? Right? And then we can respond maybe with the new array of to-dos. Right, to-dos. See that? Okay, let's try it out. Let's restart the server. And if we go back here and we refresh, okay, we're gonna do we're gonna clear this out and say create to do. And so it went out there, it went out. Let's see what happens here. The network. Notice that we did send a to do. Right, we did do a post. Notice you can see at the bottom, you can see that the payload here is the JSON that we sent. See that? It was sent over. Right, and the response was that we had 4 to-dos that we had earlier, plus the 4th. See the 4th? It says that it's null. If I add a couple more, looks like it's adding something to the array, but for some reason is null, right? So it's not able, presumably it's not able to retrieve the body, right? The object. Let's look at it. Let's put a breakpoint right here. Let's restart the server. Now I'm going to restart the server in debug mode. I'll put it in debug mode, and I'm going to do this again. Let's refresh. So add 1. There we go. Notice it stopped. If I hover over the new to do, notice it says undefined. So the body somehow it doesn't have content, right? So I'm sending the data, but somehow it's not making it to the server. Okay. So let's see how we can fix this. So to fix this, the reason it can't fix it, it can't extract the body, is that it doesn't know it doesn't know how to parse a JSON payload, right, into an object. It doesn't know how to do that. Right? For that, we'll need a library to do that. Right? The library is a library that is specifically for this. It's called body parser. Right? So body parser. Okay, this is the documentation on how to use it, how to install it. You can install it. Right? So here I can install it. So that's going to install body parser. It's done. Right? You'll notice that it will have added to my package JSON. See that? Body parser is adding as a dependency. And then the documentation tells you how to use it. And the way you use it is you first load it. You load it into your local server. Right here. So we say, well, I'm not going to use a var, I'm going to use a const. There it is. So I load the library, no require, just like before. And then JSON, we can tell it how to parse JSON here. There we go. So we're gonna first make sure that it knows how to handle special characters, URL encoded like percentage, new lines, All those are special characters, and we want to make sure they are encoded correctly in the body. So we can turn that on, and we can also tell it to turn on JSON parsing, right? So we say, okay, use, right? Make sure that you can, intercept all requests that come in. You'll see in the body that there's JSON. Make sure that you can parse it, right, and convert it back into an object, right? So now let's try this again. Let's restart the server. Actually, let's start it as a in debug mode. Let's put a breakpoint right here again. See if this time it works. Let's go back to our React.js. So let's refresh. Now let's send it to do. Okay, there we go. So now let's hover over the body. Okay, this time around, notice that we do have data. See this new to do? It does have data this time around. It has the ID, the new to do, the false, right? Okay, it's going to be appended. Let's say continue. Continue. And let's see the response. The response, see that? Now has been added at the end. See that? So now we have on the server, we have the same thing that we have on the client. So if I refresh now, notice that it is being synchronized, right? It's maintained in both places now, right? Now the client is just maintaining a copy, a local copy of what the truth is on the server. The server is the sole repository of the truth of the data, right? And as opposed to the client just being a copy of that, a temporary copy only for display purposes, right? So that the user can see this, right? But the actual truth data is what's available on the server, right? So I can create also several of these, right? I can refresh, and they're there, right? Even if I stop the my React application, if I stop it, and then I come back tomorrow, blah blah blah, right? And I restart my React application, right? And then I refresh. It's refreshing. Notice that it has a permanent copy on the server, right? As well, as long as the server is running. If the server crashes, right, we would lose everything, right? And that's the point of next week when we start talking with MongoDB, right? And what we want to make these changes persisted permanently, right? And store it on a file system that we can always reconstruct, right? And reload the state of the application, right? And make it available through the server. Okay. Yeah. So that's the intent of the server this week, right? On knowing how we communicate between the client and the server using client-server architecture, and then next week on how to make the changes permanent. All right. All right. Excellent. Any questions? Yeah, we're gonna be playing around this quite a bit for the remainder of the semester. We're gonna create lots of these server applications and receiving requests and handling and responding and whatnot. So this is obviously we'll have a good chance to be able to practice this quite a few times. So I know this might be a little bit too much for one night, but definitely we'll have chances to practice this. And again, this will only become secondhand knowledge, right? And as you practice it yourself and you gain confidence on doing it on your own. How can we understand image source pathing? I don't understand why the web browser has different paths than IntelliJ pathing. I don't understand why the web browser has different paths. Well, no, it's not that it has different. Is that when you have paths on the React side, the React gets packaged, right? It gets compiled, right, into a different directory, and the target directory where that JavaScript ends up, right, might not be the same directory on when it's uncompiled, right? So those differences is what might cause something behaving one way or another. And that's why oftentimes it's much better to use absolute paths to images as opposed to relative paths, right? So that so that you're always measuring from the source, from the root of the application, instead of moving up one directory and then down, which might work when you are when you are not compiled, but it might not work when you are compiled. So yeah, so it's better to use absolute paths for images. Right, if undergrads use an image for the first video instead of the video. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, you could use images instead of the video. That's totally fine. Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to include the video. Yeah, I use the video because it's just more interesting. All right, so what's the plan for Thursday's lectures? Are we going to have A8 tonight? It's not. Yeah, no, right. Yes, we're still working on A7. That's still due later this Sunday. And so, yeah, we won't get to talk about A8 until Thursday. Yeah, we'll talk about A8 on Thursday. I'm still tweaking it and making sure that it's compatible with whatever you're working right now on A7. So yeah, so A7 will be due this coming Sunday, then A8 will be due the following Sunday. Yes, we will have a quiz on this Thursday. Actually, wait, no, I think we're skipping. We might be skipping this week for quizzes. Yeah, no, we'll have it the following week. Why do you interact with the server directly from the component rather than using a reducer or some other? Well, no, we are, right? We are using the reducer, right? And the way we interact with the reducer is that once we have interacted with the server, we then notify the reducer of what the results were, right? Also, you have a great question about using the service. Right now, we have all this fetch happening inside of the component. A better practice is to do the following: is to have a separate, instead of having it inside of the component, like you're suggesting, we would have a service directory, a services directory, where you would have a file such as to do service service, okay, or services. And in here, you would grab all the fetch that we're doing here, you copy that, and then you would put it inside of a function, such as, for instance, you might say export const find all to-dos, right? And in here, you have the fetch. See that? And once you have that fetch, you probably just return. You say you return that fetch, and in this part over here, oops, like that. Back here, you import that. Say import. Oh, you export. Okay, it's exported. It's exported. Very good. You import find all to-dos from the service, and then you can use this instead of this fetch over here. You can say fetch. You say find all to-dos, which you receive the to-dos here, and then you notify the dispatch like that. So it becomes something like that. You can make this a little bit easier without. And if you come back, let's see, if you refresh, notice that it behaves just the same, right? This behaves just the same. So that's definitely a better pattern, right? Where you split off, these independent files, right? Another good thing to do is as follows. Well, let's move this create to do as well, right? So for instance, you might say, instead of having this, right, you can copy that. And you would have here export const create to do, right? And you pass in the to do object, and you return that fetch. Okay. And then here you would call, you say create to do and pass in the new to do, something like that. Okay, so let's see, refresh. New to do. New to do would be the argument passing here. Right, so then, oops, what did I do? New return, blah, 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 new to do, yada, yada, yada. Create to do. What did I do? Create to do. Oh, it's calling this one over here. It's calling that one. Ideally, yeah, this would be an infinite loop, right? So so instead, what you would do is that instead of you would grab this and put it inside of a single object where you export all these files, all these functions inside a single object, like that, so that in here, instead of importing each of these individually, you import the whole thing as a service. You call it the to-do service. Okay, and now you can say, to-do service dot find all to-dos, and this would be to-do service dot create to-do, right? So that's now nicely namespaced, right? So that you don't enter in these infinite loops. So if I refresh, now I can create, right, and it works just as before. Okay, so that's one good thing to do. The other thing that we did not mention is that another best practice is to create actions, right? Actions. So instead of the component having to know that it has to create these actions for the dispatcher, right? You would instead delegate that into a separate object that would know how to do that. So for instance, you could have here to do actions, right? And so you would have here things such as const find all to-dos action, right? And so this one is the one who would do everything, right? So for instance, this find all to-dos actually would live in the actions, right? So for instance, you can copy this and you would bring it over here, right? And you would pass as argument dispatch. You pass this argument as dispatch, right? And again, you would export this. You'd say export default the action here. And now what you would do is that instead of having this here, you would use the action. You would say import to do actions. Wait, did I export it? Yeah, I did. From actions to do actions, right? So now instead of having this, you would have to do actions dot find all to dos, and you just pass dispatch. So now this becomes much cleaner, right? Now the component has no idea about services, so it has no idea how this is communicating with the server. It doesn't know how to communicate with the reducer, right? It is not its business to know about the reducers or know about services. It only deals with rendering, okay? And this should work just the same. Yeah, there we go. So it works just the same. And same thing here, right? You would have an action for the create, right? And so that create to do is just basically calling the create action and passing the dispatcher over so that it can communicate with it communicates with the server and it communicates with the reducer to make sure that they're both in sync, right? That the server maintains the truth persistent value, and the reducer maintains a cached copy, right, of that information for rendering purposes. Yeah, that was a great question. Well, just where we've talked about design pattern. Yeah, exactly. Like these services, actions, directories. Very good. Yeah, Nick. Are there other resources, modules where we'll talk about design pattern? Yeah, no, definitely. Today, I just wanted to keep talking just about just the core mechanism, right? We'll talk about design patterns as we go and best practices. And certainly the assignment asks you to follow these design patterns. Today, I just wanted to talk about what the core mechanisms and the core technology and how it works, right? And everything else other than that, yeah, like services and actions are just ways that we deal with an ever-growing complexity, right? Notice that this file is getting pretty big, communicating with the server and communicating with the reducer. And so to deal with complexity, we find these design patterns, these best practices, right, to deal with an ever-growing complexity. Yep, excellent, good point, Nick. Thanks. All right, so I think I'm going to do office hours now. All right, can I ask questions about ASM? Of course, yes. Let's talk about office hours, including obviously assignments.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
All right, who wants to go first?
I'm ready. Hello?
Right. Do I have my audio not working? Maybe I can't hear anyone. Anybody talking? I don't think I'm
Hello?
listening. Why
Can you hear me?
why am I not listening? Why can't? What's going on here? Why can't I hear you? Where's settings? What is going on? Maybe. All right, can you try again?
Can you
Hello?
hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Okay, now I can hear you. Great.
Okay. May I share my screen and ask a question?
Yeah, let me turn on screen sharing. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. All right, what's up?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on the create new tweet action. And then whenever I create whatever tweet, right, and it just disappear whole thing. And then when I run the console, I can see the new tweet was added from the previous array. So this was previous array, and this is new array that I just added.
Okay.
So I'm not
Okay.
sure why it is every components are disappearing after I'm adding it.
Sure. Yeah. Can you show me how you're adding that?
So I am using what is this? So where is it? Reducer field.
No, let me see the button when you click on add or save. Can you show me that?
Yeah.
Wait, stop. That return. Okay, so see it says create tweet, line 5.
Line 5. Yes.
Yeah. So I think what you want here. Okay, so you're saying ... state, right? At the end, line 27. And so I think you don't want. Okay, see line 23. Can you comment out line 23 through line 26? Right, and instead put new line. Put new line there. Yeah, and so do tweet, comma. Yeah. Okay. Now try that again.
Oh,
There you go. Yeah,
Okay,
you were
so-
putting way too much stuff in there.
okay. So what's different from this and that?
Yeah,
I
so
got this.
you were putting an
answer.
object inside of an object, right? You were putting an object inside of it, which was incompatible to what your UI probably was expecting.
Okay, because I asked about this in Piazza, and this is like how whoever.
Well, I mean, everybody will have their own way of storing state, right? The post that you have is just an array of tweets, right? So your array should maintain the same structure, right? A
Right.
tweet object, comma, all the other tweets.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
All right.
Yeah, that was it for today. Thank
All
you.
right, great.
Hi, Professor. Can I share my screen?
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm having this error here and I don't know how to fix it.
Cannot read properties of undefined reading map. Okay. And that seems it's the post summary list. Can you see your post summary list?
Yeah, here. So this is the
What are you
code.
doing here? You're doing post summary lists. It says use selector, select all posts. So there's posts. And post is state.tweets.tweets. Okay, state.tweets.tweets. That's what you are putting in your posts, right?
Yeah, this is a reference code provided by your file.
Okay. All right. Can you try something really simple? Can you erase this in line 5?
Line 5.
Yeah. Can you erase? Not. Yeah. Wait. Just erase the second tweets.
Okay.
Yeah, just erase that, and the period 2. Right, can you refresh the screen? Okay. Maybe. All right. Let's see what who to follow list is complaining. Can you see? Go to who to follow list.
Oh, who to follow list is here.
It says cannot read blah 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 blah. Who to follow list. Okay, maybe. All right. So go to line 5. Maybe remove the last who. Maybe. Okay, save that and refresh.
Oh,
Okay, yeah, that was the way. Okay, so I had one too many references in there. Yeah.
oh, I see. Thank you, Professor.
All right. Good luck.
Hi,
Let me
Professor.
fix that. So that was on the assignment. It's set to do that.
Yes.
Okay. Let me see that. That's A7.
Yeah.
A7. Can't find it.
There was A7, there was a link you put it that you can reference to my code on. I think it's in the part of build that you give a link to your codes file.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, okay. I see. All right. Good. I'll fix it.
Thank you.
Hi,
Right.
Professor.
Let's see something on the chat. President, may you please give down for redirect computers? Oh, yes. Need to look at that. Yeah. So somebody had asked about a demo on how to redirect previous assignment links. So, for instance, if you had, do I have it here? I don't have it here. Open recent. Do I have anything here? Node.js. Assign blah blah. Webdev here. See. No. Open recent. Project. No. Component. Okay, there it is. So say you have A6 and A7, right? And my index right now is loading app, and right now app is just has A7. And let's see, right? Can I run this? Let's see if this even runs. And I'm gonna run it separate.
Professor, we can't see your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where's share my screen? Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So yeah, right now it's rendering just this one practice, right? But you have two practices, practice for A6 and practice for A7. And so we would like to be able to maybe show one, either one, right? So what we could do, right, is that we could have an intermediate component, right, that allows you to display one or the other, right? So let's see. Let's see. So here on A6, right, you can have a JavaScript that's called maybe index.js that imports React and imports the route React router down. And then it comes back with the following. It says const, we'll call it A6. And in here we put, well, let's do A7. Well, A6. We put these routers, both of these routers. Copy that. And we come here, right, and we say return div and then the routers, right? And for these, it would be A6, not A7. So this would be dot practice and build. Okay, and this would be A6, and maybe this is the default one. This is A6, and then you export this. So export default A6. Now you have the same thing for A7. But it would be for A7. A7, and this would not be the default. All right, and this would be called A7. A7. Okay. Now, if you go to back to the app.js, right? We could say something like, if the app starts off with, let me comment this out. And you say, if the route starts with A 6, then we render A6. A6. Right? What's it complaining about? What does it look? What does it look like? Yes, that one. Okay. But if I have instead that starts off with 7, then I load 7, which is A7. All right. Okay, so let's see. So if this starts off with the route, so this is index, right? App.js. A6, practice exact, practice, which is A6. That's correct, right? This is 1A6, yes. This is the build in A6, right? Yes. And what is this? Route, blah, 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 blah. Starts with path. Container. Let me see if I have A6. I have A6 practice. Ah. Oh, wait. 7 import. I have to say A6 practice. There it is. So this is for A6 and the practice for A6. And then for A7, I would have a different practice, right? Now I would need links to be able to toggle between the two. So perhaps at the top, I could create a couple links that says 2, right? And this would be, something like A6 practice. And this would be A6, maybe like that. And then I have maybe A7 here. So this would be links that appear way at the top. And maybe put something like that. There it is. So this that allows me to now toggle between A6 and A7. So I can show all of them, right? And easily navigate between the two. Okay. Yeah, Minushi, you have a question?
Hi, Professor. Good evening. Professor, can I share my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Professor, what I did that, I have created this in a React page for showing it, and instead
are you
of
sharing
showing
screen?
it, yeah, I'm sharing it. Is
No,
it
I don't see your
visible?
screen. Just a second. Why can't I see your screen? Wait, let me stop sharing. Go ahead. Try sharing. Is this you? Okay, good.
Yeah. So on my loading page, instead of showing everything, I've created a React page.
Oh, perfect.
And I'm doing this. So instead of putting those links on top, it
Perfect.
is.
Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah, and yeah, for non-React assignments, what I have done is I have used the iframe.
Oh, really? Okay.
To load the HTML page, but I got this. You can see this crawler.
Yep. Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
So is it fine or?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That's awesome.
So this will, I mean, there won't be a problem, because it has changed the.
Yeah, no, not at all. This is great. Excellent. Very nice.
Okay, thank you. And Professor, I have a question regarding the quiz grading. Can I ask? Professor, in quiz 3 for the multi-choice questions, am I one of the, out of 2 answers, my 1 answer was correct. So is it I won't be getting partial grades, or all the answers has to be correct for the marks?
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, please, I think I created a thread for quiz 3 or 4, I forget. Can you post it there so we can fix it for everybody? Yeah, I think it takes out the marks if you get it all one. You don't have no partial credit. So we'll take a look at that and fix it for everybody.
Okay, thank you. And Professor, can you enable quiz 4 for me?
Oh, okay.
My last name is Manushi.
Okay, just a minute. Are you 5610?
Sorry?
5610?
Yeah, graduate.
Isn't it already available?
I don't know. I just didn't check. I thought you enable it.
I think it's already enabled.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Professor. I'll
Right.
give.
Okay, next.
Hi, Professor.
Hi, Yangshi Wen.
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
So for the right side of my page, the image is not showing up.
Okay.
Yes, it's look like this. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
Okay. Can I see how you're referring to those images? Can you show me the code?
Yeah. I
Okay,
think this
and-
is the post.
All right. Can I see where the images actually are on your file system?
It's
On the left hand side? Yeah. Are they
in the public folder.
Okay. Can you open that up?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I see how you are loading them in the code?
This is post image here and
Source.
post JSON.
So image. Okay.
Oh,
All right.
it's not.
Can I take control?
Okay, sure.
So these are the ones that are missing,
Yes.
but not these, huh?
Yes. That's weird.
Interesting. Source image, then React blue PNG. Oh, interesting. The value is not being set. See that?
Yeah.
So where is this being set? Here? Can you show me this component? Where's
Yeah.
that? Can you show me what's happening?
Okay.
Is it this one?
Yes.
Post image. Interesting. So we can always take a look at the actual object. Video, logo image, avatar image. So where's that image here? There's avatar image.
Oh yeah, maybe it's different name.
Yeah, maybe you named it something different now. The avatar image or logo image, maybe?
Is this because you didn't combine the reducer for this part, for the post item, post summary.
Yeah,
'Cause-
maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
so but now that you know exactly what the data is in there, you should be able to figure it out, right?
yeah, because all of this data are from tweets list, right? It's not
Yes.
Yeah.
from what happening.
Okay.
All right, you can figure it out, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
sure. Yanjing Deng,
Yeah.
hi, what's up?
How are you? I'm fine, thank you.
Great, thank you. What's up?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Can I share my screen?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, my question is about the challenge part. So when I edit profile, I'm curious about the last part, like birth date. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so for birth date, you put like this. I'm wondering, is it input? Is it
Yeah,
input?
I think I think I was too silly. I took a snapshot of Twitter's actual profile screen, and
Uh-huh.
I think the better thing to do here is just make it a
Like
date
this?
date
A
type.
date. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, just make it a date so that you can click on it and then it gives you a widget.
Okay.
You select the date.
Okay. So it's also in input tag, right?
Yes,
Okay, I see. Thank you
Yep.
very much.
sure.
Hello, Professor.
Hi, what's up?
Okay, I'll just share my screen
Go ahead.
to, yeah, so could you see that?
Yes.
So, okay, a follow-up question on the previous one. So, where is that? Okay. In the previous question, so we have a .who. So when I delete that, it will be like rendering fine. And but for the tweet list index, if I don't have this .tweets, this will broke. So I'm not sure. Oh wait, it's home. So I'm not sure where does this .tweets come from. Could you explain that?
Well, I guess it depends on your reducers, right? How you combine them.
Where is that?
Yeah. So okay. So wait a minute. Actually, wait a minute. On line 8, can you try something? Did you have the .tweets at the end of that line before?
No, I deleted that. Before that, I have .tweets on that. But then, I mean, in both places, it will be fine. But I know that the who to follow this .js is the same structure with this one. I'm not sure why there is another .tweets in this file,
Yeah, so
but not.
Yeah, so I think it's about the how it's combined. Can I look at your tweets reducer?
Tweets reducer, this one.
Yeah, so this says initial state. Okay, so see, it's an object that contains a tweets with posts, right?
Oh.
In it, right? Whereas, can I look at your who?
Who.js?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it only have one.
Yeah, exactly. So the other one has one inside the other, whereas this one is just probably just an array.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
And another quick question. So what exactly should I show for the slash, like the home screen for the whole website? I mean, do we like finally gonna have the Twitter clone for this page?
I'm not sure what you mean.
I mean, what are we? What do you want us to show for the home screen for the whole website? I mean, localhost.
Yeah, no, yeah. This would be this would be it, the home screen with the at the top the where you can tweet, right? Where you can enter a tweet, and then this list below it.
So if TA want to find my previous assignment, she can only just type different addresses.
Well, ideally, in the practice, what we've done is that we've given links to build and practice and whatnot, so you can navigate between practice and build. So I don't have to actually type the build.
I mean, I don't have I don't have any link from the homepage. I mean, this homepage, I don't have any links to the practice.
Oh, okay. No, the tweet at the top, the little birdie, that should go back to the practice. Oh, you do.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, it's true. Okay, got it. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hi, Professor.
Hi, what's up?
I have a question about deleting the tweet.
Sure.
I'm going to share my screen right now. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
So the thing is, I'm able to add new tweet, but I cannot delete new tweet and existing tweet. And when I try to delete them,
Okay.
I run into this error.
Okay, sure.
And
Can I see the filter? Yeah, what do you do there? You say tweet ID, action, tweet ID. Okay, can I see what you're passing to? And that's awfully small. I can barely see your
sorry.
But can I see the handler when you click on the button?
Which one are you referring to?
So when you click on that X, can I see the X button?
Let me go back.
On the code, obviously. On the code, that X button. Where can I see it?
Code, okay.
Can you make that bigger?
Sure.
Okay, is that the X right there?
This one.
Remove blah, blah. Okay, so you're saying, oh, you have an infinite loop there. Oh, maybe no, you don't. Okay, you're saying delete tweet, click handler, blah, blah, blah. And you're saying dispatch, delete tweet, comma, tweet. That should work. So type delete tweet. Okay, can I see the reducer for this?
That's right.
No,
Wait,
you had
no, yeah. I got it.
Okay, this is delete tweet. Delete tweet right there. Colon tweets state dot tweets dot filter tweet dot ID. I only keep the action dot tweet. Okay. Can you go up? Posts. Oh, I see. All right, see line 3?
Yes.
It says that the state contains an array.
The state
But
is
then down below,
action.
I'm sorry?
The state is post and action.
Yeah, no, I know, but your state only contains an array, right? Tweets is an array, right? If you go to line 1 and you go into the tweets.json, it's just an array, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so go back. So the state on line 3 says that the state is just the array. But then go down further. But then on line 32, you're saying that the state is actually an object.
Okay.
So what you need to do is remove the parentheses, curly brackets, all the way up to state. Remove that. Remove the tweets. Yeah, remove that. And remove tweets colon. Right, and bring state all the way to return. Okay. All right, so that fixes delete, but your create is wrong too. You create, see, you're creating an array. Right, so that line 24 through 27, that's wrong. So comment that out.
Because I ran into the same problem that a student asked way earlier.
Yeah. So Yeah, comment out line 27 to 24.
24 to 27.
Yeah, comment that out. And so put instead a new line, tweet, comma, comma. Yep. Okay, that should work.
Okay.
So go back and try it. Okay, try deleting.
No.
Cannot read properties of undefined reading filter. Can you refresh this? Oh, wait, no, go back to your code. Yeah, no, we forgot something. Go back to the code. Yeah, I'm sorry. Remove the dot tweets on line 33.
Oh.
Remove the period too. It's just filter.
Oh.
Yeah, try it again.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's working now.
Yep.
Okay. It's working now.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Hello, Professor.
Hi, what's up?
I have a question about creating the tweets as well.
Sure. Want to share your screen?
Yep. So right now, when I try to create a tweet, it just doesn't work.
Okay. Can I see your reducer?
Yep.
Okay. Can you see your action at the top? Yeah. All right. See, same thing, right? Say state equal post. Post is an array. So on line 28, on line 20, instead of being curly brackets, it's supposed to be square brackets. Yeah.
Okay. So it's supposed to be an array instead of a JSON file. I mean JSON object.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we initialized it at the beginning as an array. And so you need to maintain the same structure.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't work either.
So let's see what errors are saying. Can you see the errors? Well, we don't. Okay, so can I see what that tweet is doing? When you click on the tweet, can you see the button that clicks that tweet? Well, no, I mean on the code.
On the code, okay. Where is it now? Index.
That would be. No, I think it's in the index. No, isn't it in the what's happening? Isn't it?
What's happening? Oh yeah, that is on the.
No, down below. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, tweet, yada yada yada. Type. Okay, so see, say it says tweet. What's happening? Yeah, so you don't want that. So I think you want just tweet. It's just what's happening, right? So wait, what's happening? Wait, oh no, wait, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. So what are you doing here? Text value, blah blah blah. Value, what's happening is just a string, right? So on change event, set what's happening, event.target, yada yada yada. And then you're saying dispatch type is create tweet, and then you're passing tweet what's happening, right?
Yep.
Okay. Can you go back and can you go back to the reducer? And it's. Oh, is this what you're using?
Yes.
No, you were showing me something else.
Oh, on the index. No.
Oh, okay. So, so the plot thickens. Which one are you using? Because the other one is static. It's always returning the same thing. So definitely that would not work. But the one you showed me was handling something.
Oh, what's happening? Yeah, get confused with.
Yeah, the reducer, you must have had it open because you had it earlier, right? I mean, yeah, this one's always returned the same array. So definitely would not work. But you showed me another one before.
Yeah, that's not it. That's not it.
Oh, what's that? Maybe this is one. Oh, okay, here it is. Okay, so are you using this reducer or the other one? I don't know. Let's see. This one is under reducer example. This is under reducer
Oh,
example.
I created in the wrong file.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, all right, let's try that. I think we broke something. It says,
Yep.
oh, posts. Okay, so where is posts? Maybe it's not posts, maybe it's tweets.json.
Tweets.json.
Yeah, which says data. See, it says tweets.json. Okay, so go back to tweets.js. Go up. Okay, where are you getting the data from here?
Should I import?
You need to import it, right? Well, how was this working before? I don't get it. Now I'm curious. Oh, right, you were using the other one, which was always returning the same thing. Okay, so
Which was
import
static.
import posts from. So posts from dot go up one. So go up one dot slash data. You have to put from at some point. And then tweets.json. So from data and then slash tweets.json. Yep. Okay. And let's make sure that reduce your. Okay, I think this should work.
Okay, so then do I have to export it, correct?
Oh yeah, you need to export this. Yeah. All right. There you go.
Thank
Cool.
you. Yeah, I don't know why I put in the wrong file.
Yeah.
Also the for some reason the icon for the eliminate, it doesn't render for me.
Okay.
So
Okay, I see the item, the tweet item, tweet list item. Where is the remove? Can you see where you are using it? So delete, there it is. So
yep.
FA remove, FA full right. Is that FA or should it be a FAS or something, of FAR or something? Yeah, mine,
sure.
yeah, that one. Yeah, that FA, I think it should be like FAR or FAS or something. Maybe R then. Yeah, go back. Let's see. Go back to the code. So wait, delete yada 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 class name. FA remove, FA pull right. Wait, let me just check to see if that's the correct name. Font, awesome, awesome. Remove, right? Remove icon. Can you type Can you try trash, actually, instead? FAS, trash, FAS there, and then trash. Render it.
Sorry, Professor.
There it is.
Professor, I have a question regarding a quiz.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's you don't have you don't have that version there. Just use that instead.
Oh, so the X would be for the paid version.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
That's
All right.
weird.
Then, thank you.
Sure. Does somebody have a question about the quiz?
Yeah, Professor.
You want to share your screen?
Okay. I'm giving the quiz right now.
Did you have a question about the quiz?
Yeah, for question number 2.
All right, can you share your screen real quick?
Yeah, just a minute.
What's up?
Yeah, Professor, for B part, do I have to put // well, since it's the same directory, or just like with the file name is okay?
No, just the file name is fine.
And Professor, I have a question regarding that.
Yeah.
For this part, like where we are putting the properties. So like for this E part, like we can put constructor props, right? Any property we can.
Yes, constructor, correct.
Yeah, fine. Thanks a lot, Professor.
Sure.
Hi, Professor. I have a question with the assignment. I just can't like get something to run, and I've been like trying to figure out why for the longest time. So I was wondering if you could help me out there.
Go ahead.
So this is like, if you can see my screen, does it show the localhost 3000? Okay. So if I press build, then I get this like weird error where it's like undefined like reading map, and it happens twice. And I've been trying to look for why that might be.
Okay.
So I'll show you my source code.
Yeah, go to tweet
so
list.
yeah, so tweet list is right here. So I guess it's like having an error on this line, the map function.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to wonder why that's the case, because
Okay,
I feel like it looks right to me.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, let's see. Can I see your store where you do the combination combined reducers?
That would be in
that would be, there we go. Okay, so you are only putting who in there. See that? So you don't have to.
Oh, okay. So then I would do something like
well, no, you have to do the combine.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Combined reducers.
Right.
So you have to load also the other reducer. So line 4, right? You need to bring in the tweets reducer.
Oh yeah. Is it okay if I do it like this, or do I have to,
no, because they're in different files, so you can't do that.
Oh, okay. So then it'd be like
yeah, you need a brand new one to bring in the tweets.
Okay. And then let's see. Reducers. So tweets
from
reducers dot tweets.
Yeah, there you go.
And then will I just like
so in line 10 you would say const reducers equal combined reducers.
Reducers equals combine
reducers.
And then I put both of them in there, right?
No, there would be a in an object. Put it inside of an object. So curly brackets and then who comma tweets. And now on line 11 pass in reducers.
And then reducers.
Okay, now go back to there you go.
Oh, cool. Gotcha. All right. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
Hi, Professor. I have one quick request from you. Could you please enable access for graduate students to access Zoom recordings, because usually it takes time to upload Zoom video. So we can't see actually the Zoom recordings after class.
Yeah, I wasn't able to do that. I don't know why that is. And so, yeah, so that I have to upload them manually.
Zoom, okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll upload it. I'll upload it tonight. Next.
All right, have a good night, Professor.
Good night. Yuting, you have a question? Yang Chen? Rahil? Khalid? Hello?
Hi, Professor.
Hi, what's up?
So I have a quick question. So I'm wondering that will like state structure change if you use combined reducer instead of using just one single reducer?
Yeah, so if you have a single reducer, then the state, there's only one state. And when you start combining reducers, then you have kind of like substates. And the names of those substates is the keys that you use in the object when you combine the reducers. So that instead of being state, it would be state dot the substate.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, just one level of indirection. Yang Chen, you have a question? You're muted, Yang Chen, if you're speaking. I don't know. How about Rahil? You have a question, Rahil? Rahil? Rahil, you're muted. If you're speaking, I can't hear you. All right, maybe you folks might have stepped out for a bit. You will reach out to me if you have a question. All right. Oh, Yang Chen, you're back?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was just I was waiting because I kind of a long line, but
sorry about that.
Anyways, thanks for waiting until all the way at the end. Yeah, I was just a little confused about like how the I don't know, the directories for the images work. Is there I don't know how to ask this question, but is there like a, I don't know, explanation for
so basically the things that it stops working when you start moving files around, and then the relative paths are broken. And so my suggestion would be not to use relative paths at all. Instead, use an absolute path, from slash, as opposed to using dot dot slash dot dot slash. You just go from the root slash images, yada yada yada, right? So now, if you move any files around because you're copying from A6 to A7, or you're moving anything around, now you don't have broken links, right? Because if you move them up or down, your relative paths are broken. But instead of use absolute paths, it's always measured from the top of the context right down, no matter where it's being referenced from.
So you're saying that all I have to do to use absolute paths is just use slash. I don't need to use like dot dot
slash images slash and then the file.
Okay. All right. I think I will give that a try. That sounds a lot easier than what I was doing before.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
All right, sure. Rahil, you're back? All right, Rahil, if you want to reach out to me, ping me tomorrow morning. Maybe we can chat some more if you have any questions, or you can text me. All right. All right, excellent. Thank you. Good night.